It's This Week in X, presented by Crushing Comics for Hellions number 12. We're here on the Hellfire Gala red carpet, and here's our initial takes on the issue, starting with Tyler.
This is a blast.
Harry.
It's fun to drink and mess around.
Fariha.
My secondhand embarrassment for Havoc was all-time high. And you, Peter?
Funny books work when I laugh at the jokes. Unfortunately, here I did not. And now we're going to dig into Hellions number 12. Okay, folks, we're going to dig deeply into Hellions number 12, out on the 2nd of June, 2021. It comes with spoiler warning because we're going to talk about this book, other Hellfire Gala books, maybe other Marvel books as well. But we can jump right in at this point and get our slightly more extended initial reactions before we start stepping through the Hellions night here in the Gala. For Hellions number 12, let's start with Tyler and his reaction to the issue.
I mean, I love how Wells make use of crossovers and events to move plot forwards and to do some character work. It also helps a lot that Segovia is turning in really good art here. It is easily 4.75 bananas out of 5.
Bananas.
Yes,
Harry.
You know, this is just a fun hangout issue. And I think this book, more than any of the others, are primes to just have great little character beats, hang out at a party, watch Thor get creeped out by Sinister, and just sort of enjoy the ride. But also, this definitely pushes all these characters into different places, at least slightly. Like, it's just a nice balancing act of like how low stakes, but lots of enjoyment and hints of things to come. I'm giving it 4.5 neurotic havocs out of 5.
Fariha.
So we all decided that we were going to dress up for this gala thing. And then when I read the Marauders and X-Force first, I'm like, I'm not dressing up. I'm not putting in any effort if the book writers are not doing it. Until I got to Hellions, then I'm like, yes, okay. Because this is a perfect party book. Like, this is what party is. Everything is about within the party. Everything is about different interaction. I have been to enough cringy, very embarrassing weddings to know that this is how it is. Like, it was so relatable in so many different ways that I was like, yes, give me more. And then also the art was fantastic. So I was all about it. This was like the best appetizer ever. Mozzarella sticks for me.
I love that.
I have to start with the art. I think Segovia has turned into such a superstar over the course of this. I mean, he's been good. We've liked him all along. We always give positive notes, but this is stellar. He handles so many different looks, so many different emotions. So it was hard to find a panel that I loved the most. He's really good at comedy, which I think a lot of artists that can draw on this muscular kind of glossy house style aren't actually good at comedy moments. You know, if you think back to the big 90s artists that a lot of these can be kind of pulled through them, they don't have that. And he does. And I'm talking about the art because I really hated this issue. I hated it. It's so stupid. I don't really like funny things. I'm kind of like a humorless person. I'm like, it's funny when you're with friends, but like when I'm reading a book, if the book is primarily a funny book, it takes a lot for the humor to land with me over and over again. And I think the reason Hellions has worked for me so far is because it has so much plot that like the funny stuff is funny because it's happening alongside the plot. And here it just felt like we really just took a full-on break to like make hee ha ha jokes about Nanny. And I think that made me hate the Nanny's back. I'm like, crack the egg and be done with it. I'm over. And then also like it comes off of a really weak arc for me on that arcade arc. I'm kind of like, this really tanked this book. It's out of my favorites. It's not in my top group anymore. I'm kind of over it now. So this is really, I think, where I turned on the Hellfire Gala. I think I was like hanging on by the skin of my teeth and my fingernails until I got to this book. And then I was like, screw this party. Yeah, I'm going to take a little bit more of a back seat here because just because I didn't like it doesn't mean our whole conversation has to be me complaining about it, that it's bad. I know that I'm a humorless bastard. And based on the Twitter reaction, most people have liked this. So I'm just giving you 1/4 of the perspective of the panel here. So I will just help to proctor this conversation. And in proctoring it, we can start with the first scene, which is that Sinister, Quanon, and Havoc are the only ones with invites, which is funny, but it also funny with quotes, but it also drives home that party is not for all mutants. It's for the mutants who are worth seeing, and for the mutants who Emma has a purpose for being there. Notice that Empath, her former student, though not a favorite former student, did not get an invitation. And so they head off to the party, and Quanon tells them, look, if we're partying, you're training, it's all work. Tyler, what do you think about this entree to the party for some, but not for others?
I mean, I like the fact that Havoc came out and they are all dissing him, and then when Quanon came out, they are like, wow. I mean, that kind of the reaction is like totally different. In some ways, I kind of understand why they don't want a robot 5-year-old and a nanny at a state event.
Alcoholic nanny bot,
yeah, but it's kind of I mean, it is, if I'm one of them, I would feel really terrible.
I know, you can't help but like feel bad for these psychopaths, because even though they all, they really probably shouldn't be there. Like, I think we've all been like the person who hasn't been invited to the party at least once, and you can't help but just like feel for them. And I like seeing Quanon come out, and you see just John just seeing Grey Crow Grey Crow thirsting even harder, and it's like I pushed that forward a little bit. I thought it was nice.
Fariha?
So we talked about it before that, even the mutant started with X-Men started with a metaphor, and then what metaphor means now and how we are doing it, dealing with it now and stuff like that. A lot of that kind of reminded me of this whole idea that even that has been very prevalent in this Pride Month is like, how queer can you be? Like, like certain queer should not, queer culture should not be presented, and certain, fully understanding that what metaphor, like imaginary metaphor versus real life metaphor and all of that. But there was like this whole conversation of sanitization of pride, something that I recently learned about, and it felt a lot of that. It's like, okay, we are only going to showcase in air quote, productive member of our mutant culture, our mutant, we're going to show that everything is perfect. So these undesirables are not going to be there. And that was very I thought that was that meant a lot. Not meant a lot. I mean, that kind of really told me that how the mutant culture not being what it is, or they are still there's a lot of things that are wrong with it. And it kind of even though we were partying, even though we are laughing about it, a lot of these things was not funny. And especially as how Nanny is kind of slowly descend into her drunkenness and everything, it really shook me in a way, because it's like, okay, we talked about it before that for some mutants this is a second chance, for some mutant this is a paradise. A lot of them it's not, and for Nanny it's coming back, it's actually just out there in the face. So I think from that point of view it was I'm not about this at all.
That's just a great point.
Well,
that's
but the thing,
such a good thing to raise.
I mean, it is a good point, but a state dinner is not a pride parade. So there's a certain amount of decorum that is kind of needed at such an event.
It's still a celebration of
this
identity and what happened.
Because the thing is the way it was invited. If you look at the invitation, it's a gala. It's about mutant culture. It's about humans and mutants mingling. So why are these mutants not invited to the
there's no riffraff invited to the Met Gala either.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, the Met Gala is not considered to be all humans.
How dare you call the egg riffraff in there?
So maybe they should get an after party invite instead of just no invite at all.
That's patronizing.
That's something could be true. But the thing is, we have seen it so far that there's all different kinds of kids, mutants running around. Why are they that state invite?
No, I know.
What are they there for? If you are going to be about state, then I'll invite the your military or your
The council.
peace and your quiet
Mhm.
council and all that. But so that's one of the reason I was like, and yes, like this is fallacy we fall into when we're trying to compare real life metaphor with with the imaginary. But I was kind of thinking about it. It's like in a way it's a sanitization of mutant. Like it's like we are going to portray an idea of us in front of the world that is not a complete picture. Which how is that any different from what human did?
That is more acceptable.
Yeah,
I
like
think
how is
there's
that
something
any
here.
different?
I
Like
really
it's different.
do.
Yeah, how is that any different than what humans did all these years? Like, So
Mhm.
Well, and that's the thing about it being an imperfect metaphor. Like, does it, to Tyler's point, does it line up perfectly with Pride or any other events such as that we could line it up with? No, not exactly. It doesn't exactly line up to the Met Gala either, quite frankly. But in the amount that it lines up with that, can we draw some interesting conclusions and commentary? Yeah, I really think it's a fantastic point about the whole respectability politics of blank, and in this case about mutants. Well, can we be respectable mutants, if we have somebody who's an egg? That's too unsettling. But then I think it also raises the question of like, why is iBoy invited? Like, is there really a sanitization that is happening just based on appearance? Is it based on behavior? Is it based on reputation? Not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but Sinister and Nanny get into their little slap fight together. She calls Sinister an abductor, an abuser, and a murderer of children. She's at least two of those three things too. So it also kind of begs the question of if it's about appearance, is it about behavior, is it about reputation? Is it just about what kind of face you want to put on the mutant race?
And that's actually what really started thinking about it, because the reason she's actually bringing those up, because she knows that she's those too, but he was invited and she was not.
Yeah, it's kind of like pot, kettle, black, but that's the point. It's like, I'm a pot, you're a kettle. Why are we being treated differently in this environment if we're both, cast iron cookware?
Right.
And also don't forget that this Nanny is more honed.
Oh yeah, she's honed.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
She's gonna hone a champagne flute and do some damage. Okay, so let's move on from that to, I guess, just before we get into the whole mingling and everybody being at the party, there's two specific things I want to do, and then we can get into the whole everything. One is Alex. This is a pervasive theme in this book. Havoc is agitating for some kind of reevaluation or recontextualization of Madeline Pryor's fate. Of course, very famously, she's deemed a clone of Jean Grey, who's a living person who doesn't necessarily give her consent to have a clone going around. So they are not going to revive her. And Alex is continuing to pursue Quiet Council members here, which I thought a little bit strange. Have we seen him talk to Jean? I was trying to remember if he's ever spoken to Jean directly. So I just thought it was intriguing that he's using this party as his chance to kind of drum up support, which is falling completely on deaf ears here. Tyler?
No, he has not talked to Jean. I think of course, Scott broke the news to him.
Right.
And then I think he raised it with Emma. And and then here with Xavier and Magneto. And it's not the fact that he's trying to champion for Maddie's resurrection. It is the way he's doing it. It kind of really makes him pathetic.
It looks. He's just like, oh, have you thought about it? I mean, maybe there's something wrong. They're just like,
I just need clarity as to why Maddie is not coming back.
Yeah. No, this is funny. I think it's straight up funny. Sorry, Peter, but like it's also. But I also think there's a plot thing here. I think there's a character thing here happening where the other characters are not like incredibly. They're still, psychopaths and what have you, but they are slowly kind of bonding more, becoming more together. Like Empath did a nice thing for another member of the team. That's never happened. But meanwhile, Havoc is just focused on his dead ex. And also like he doesn't even try to stick up for them when it's the big fight. He's like trying to stay away. So it's just showing like it felt like a real divide. Yeah. He's like, oh, I don't even know these guys. Like, but it's showing like a real divide that I feel like is more than just like comedy. It seems like they're more becoming a cohesive unit in their own way than he is, which I'm curious to see if it'll play out.
Fariha?
No, I mean, well, next fall is apparently about Inferno. So I'm glad that Maddie keeps being brought up. And then also I wanted to see more happen for Maddie Pryor, because we have seen it like there's like every single X moment that I pick, all of their past is based on like horror trauma being manipulated by men, and we're slowly seeing that a lot of that is being redeemed, like with Quanon and Betsy. We have seen that. So I want that to be resolved too. So I want someone to champion for Maddie, even though she's not necessarily altogether there. But and then so I'm glad that this is happening. And yes, it is extremely pathetic for how he was going about it, and I feel secondhand embarrassment for him.
Yeah.
Like that's throughout.
It's brutal.
Like,
it's pretty brutal.
It's very like I like not good. But yeah, so I'm just kind of. I'm glad that the plot keeps on going. And the thing is, like, Xavier and Magneto's reaction to it was, yeah, they're villains, right? Like they're ex-villains now. Like
they're up
right,
there. They're not villains, but they're definitely like just like
that in the gray.
We get no help from you. Like you are not like on our side in this sense. You know? Like, oh, there's politics to be considered. Like, what are you talking about? You have magic resurrection powers. Just bring her back.
Yeah,
you know?
And then it was just, I don't know. I mean, the whole thing was like, and then then he was like cheering, like, oh, I shouldn't keep you from your friend, and then cheering. That I was like, there's no coming back from this.
We recently just wrapped up actually this week Inferno in our household read, and it's not a favorite of mine, and it's interesting because you go back to the root of how Alex got involved with Maddie, and part of it is he's definitely being manipulated by her almost the entire time, but his affection and his care for her is real because he's really frustrated with Scott, and as he gets to know her better, he's like, she's a person. But then it all gets turned on its head because it turns out that she's a sliver of Phoenix Force and she's a sliver of Jean, and she really was just an empty vessel before then that maybe never would have woken up. And so when we come back to Havoc still having feelings about her and wanting to bring her back, and I know there's other Madeline Pyre stuff that's happened since then, but I never can help but go back to Inferno and be like, she was forcibly taken as a sliver of personality that always belonged to Jean. Like, you can feel the way you want to feel about her, but that doesn't give you the right to say that she's got her own bodily agency and sovereignty. She's a splinter of Jean. Like, this is where this clone stuff gets really interesting, Like, Gabby is a clone of Lara, but Gabby has her whole existing experience, her own personality. But Maddie is, I don't know. So it gives me interesting feelings because I'm like, I kind of start to think of Havoc as the bad guy and he's like the villain of Jean Grey. I'm like, go talk to Jean about this. Like, or like, why aren't you in love with Jean if you're so in love with Maddie? Why don't you get into how bad Cyclops treats Jean if you're so into how bad Cyclops treats Maddie? So I just like never quite know how to feel. And I know there's big Havoc fans out there. I don't want to get into it. I do really like him, but this particular aspect of him sometimes makes me really confused.
Oh, by the way, I want to mention though, I don't want Havoc to solve Maddie Jean problem. I want Maddie to come back and then whatever, some woman pick up that plot thread and resolve this. Because I want every ex-ladies to become friends by the time we're done. Yeah, because I am just done with finding like, there's like not a single ex-lady, except for Kate probably, who does not have a horrible past.
No, Kate mostly oppressed other people. She didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Her dad died in Genosha. I mean, bad things have happened.
That's true.
It's just like it's like yeah, every single one of them. I'm like, ugh, seriously? Like, yeah, no. So that's one of the reasons I want that plot to go somewhere. So I'm glad that she's not forgotten and it's bringing back up. I'm like, maybe there will be something in the future.
Well, I mean, the next story is called Inferno, as everyone points out.
So
now we're going to move into the rest of the party. Fair game, open floor, open bar. There's data pages to talk about. There is Nanny versus Sinister. There is Wild Child and Aurora. There's a lot of things, but let's stop short of the fireworks, which the team observes at the very end of the issue. So open floor about the party. Who's the most excited to talk about it?
I just want to point out something, which is not really Hellfire Gala's per se, but it's Hellions per se.
All right. Well, I mean, I think Tyler, if it's Hellions, it certainly is part of the party.
Yeah, is that this write up in the content page or whatever you call it, it has a very distinct Sinister voice, but then not the main Sinister. My guess is that this is a clone of Sinister who has been writing all these things. So yeah, because if you read it, it is really in that tone, and not just this issue. It has been that way for a couple of issues already.
Fariha?
Interesting.
No, I was sorry, I lost my train of thought. No, before I actually ask about it, I wanted to ask, what is the history between Kyle, forgot his mutant code,
Wild Child?
and
Wild Child.
Wild Child and or Jean Marie? Like, what's their? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I don't want to react to it without knowing that. What horror she has in her life?
I don't know that any of us have read enough Alpha Flight to answer that question.
Because it's mostly in Alpha Flight, and
Okay.
Alpha, Gamma, Omega, according to Dr. Google. So that is but I mean, Jean Marie has always been a little bit schizophrenia. Is that
she has multiple personality. Like she has multiple personality disorder. Okay. So is that okay? So it was like one of those. Because I mean there was like a good thing, because I feel like this is also a honed in Wild Child. So maybe he's thinking everything of a little differently. But then there was also like it was a little bit like the men fighting over the lady and all of that. But I feel like this is like just there to be for a party scene to be happen. But I was glad to see that Dakin is like, I know I have not dressed very well, but
I knew you were gonna say
that's my note. That's my note. I was like, Fariha, Fariha is sneaking into the writer's room all the time and making them write something that she's thinking.
Exactly. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, we're in the same wavelength over there. So I was just gonna point that out, and then it just like, and then also like Nightcrawler is like very much there
wasted
trying.
He's sloshed.
He's
he's
I miss you.
And then trying to recruit who was he trying to recruit? Nanny, right? Yeah, Nanny into his way of eggs. So that was like, I'm like, oh, what's that about? So
that was start with a tough customer, man, going for Nanny like immediately.
Yeah. Exactly. So the thing is, like, a lot of that kind of made me laugh. And then Sinister just going about being Sinister.
Sinister just pressing the flesh. He wants to meet everybody. He doesn't know who's Iron Man and who's Captain America. Or
because he
thinks he has an equivalent title to Black Panther. He is really just living his life. It really makes you wonder, like, as much as he's a quintessential X-Men villain, like, wouldn't it be fun to see him fight the Avengers a little bit? Like, he does rub up against these other characters in an interesting way.
Yeah,
like the whole time I was kind of laughing about the fact that he was saying all of this in an English accent, which Peter pointed out this actor that he thinks about when it's Sinister from Rocky Horror, and I keep on thinking, like, he's just going about like that. It's like, yes, I am Sinister, and then but then he's head to head going against like Exodus was really funny too. It's like, I know you're trying to copy me, but hey.
Any other thoughts on Sinister's path through this party and his eventual confrontation with Nanny?
It's just funny to me. To old Harry here.
Nanny has a hatch in her head to pour drinks into. It's like if you're trying to mold something inside of an eggshell. I watched on the Gourmet Makes. Claire Saffitz was making molded chocolate eggs, and she poked a hole in the egg, and then she drained all of the egg out, and then she just put a little bit of chocolate in and swirled it around in the egg so that she could later unpeel the egg and get a perfect chocolate shell from inside of the egg. And I was like, oh, just like Nanny just pokes a hole in the top, pours in the alcohol, and just sloshes it around until all the inside is well coated with alcohol. I mean, she is a person inside there, right? Like somewhere inside the egg.
That's what I thought.
So she's just like pouring, she's just bathing in alcohol. She's trying to bring the alcohol her literal alcohol level is like up to her eyeballs. What is happening inside the egg?
There's some answers man is not meant to know yet. Maybe if we evolve as a species further.
The other thing is that isn't that supposed to be egg?
Yeah.
You guys are gonna make me sick.
It was egg. She just pushed her limbs out when she got resurrected.
Well, didn't you see that she had a different egg though? That she had like a costume egg too, and so maybe she was like walking around in the egg at the beginning, but then she's
who knows what she have done inside? Like, she's a scientist, right? So who knows what she have done?
I mean, she's practically Iron Man in that egg. So it really makes me, one of the plot threads that is lingering is kind of like, what is Nanny's deal? Why is she in the egg? We've seen her now being replaced in the egg. And also, what is going on with Orphan Maker? Like, we got that whole beat of like, oh, his goo is too dangerous. We've got to like reconstitute an armor for him. I was sure by getting him drunk, that's probably my favorite beat in the party, is that Empath gets Orphan Maker drunk, not by giving him liquor, but just being like, drunkenness is just euphoria. Like, which is like the purest empath moment I think that he's had in his entire character history. Of like, I'm just letting the kid have a good time. And then he gets his ass kicked by all the women from the Hellions. I'm like, yes, that's some continuity that I like. But
that's the thing. That's the thing I kind of enjoy, because Wells bring back certain things that he sort of like, hinted at or dropped at a little bit. And you kind of think like, oh, maybe he forgotten about it. But no, he did not, because the Roulette and Cat's Eyes fight was a flashback in issue 1.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I kind of like this. And, the whole Nanny with Sinister thing was at the end of the first arc, where Nanny basically threatened Sinister.
Right.
Okay, so there was a little bit of plot. It wasn't all funny. I just, as soon as like a book goes for like an overt funny moment, like when she breaks the glass or whatever, like I just tune out really hard. I don't know. It's something about my brain. I'm like, oh, you're trying to make me laugh, huh? Like, I just get really combative. But I agree. There were maybe more plot elements than I initially acknowledged.
We're going to turn that frown upside down.
No, and the thing is that I am actually kind of enjoying the fact that Nanny is becoming the force against Sinister. Like, it's like, it's not necessarily Havoc or Quanon, it's just Nanny. And then the thing is, like, it just like, and the fact that she wears lipstick on her,
she just like,
she just draws a lip on a shell. Like,
gotta have a lip.
Something about this. There's something about this woman. Like, I'm just like, I'm fascinated by this woman.
Well, this ends in a really interesting place. So the Hellions are ejected via magic, although they eventually do magic the person, not just magic the magic, although they do eventually walk back out through a gate. And when they're walking out through the gate, it's actually much later, because it's definitely been played in Marauders that the fireworks happen pretty close to midnight based on the people streaming out of the party. So they witnessed the psychic fireworks. Greycrow says, you gotta be kidding me, or something. You gotta be something in me, some expletive. And Quanon says it's enough to make you feel anything is possible. So more mystery revelations of whatever the fireworks are. But then, my, we get a Sinister who's been all sliced up, who's happy to be home, which means we absolutely do have multiple Sinisters running around at the same time here, because this is the Sinister who got Ginsued in Emeth.
It's time. It's coming. Weird clone action.
Yeah.
One of my comments was that what was Quanon talking about to Northstar? Who is this David? What is
this? Is Prodigy.
About?
Prodigy,
yes.
I think. But I was like, why is Quanon talking to she says, I trust you to take care of David Northstar. He needs help, but not the Hellions kind. Maybe something transpires at the party. Maybe it's about who's gonna maybe get killed. There's some hint that somebody's going to die in X Factor. Maybe it's about the trial of Magneto. Maybe there's two different, it turns out there are two different prodigies. I don't know. Whoa.
It's a teaser. That's the thing. That's why I kind of love this setup, because this first trio of books are basically hinting at stuff that is going to happen in the next 3 weeks. And, that's why it's a perfect start to an event, because you get like excited. It's like, okay, what's happening to David? Who is this David in the first place? Oh, Prodigy. Okay, so what's happening to Prodigy? Didn't he just get resurrected? Did he really die? Did he not die? What is happening? Why is he supposed to be on Hellions? And how can Hellions help him?
And weirdly, X-Force, I mean, Marauders, you can make the complaint that it's just it's mostly teases, but it's more like a mood, so to speak. But like, X-Force and this have like, they push their plots along. They have a lot of character beats, like, I think it's like, this is a book that is kind of itself. It still works.
And also in that ending scene, I just want to point out, Nani says, get this thing off me, which is, everybody wants their hair pulled back before they throw up. I know it well. But if you want your egg taken off, again, I just feel like there's like something simmering with Nanny that'll be interesting to talk about.
And then the empath also says, stay still. So they have done it before. Like, so it looked to me, it looked like they they know this, how to do this. So it's not like a new
Interesting.
thing. Like, and yeah.
Well, folks, that's all that we're going to be talking about on Hellions number 12. Kind of amazing. We have 12 whole issues of this strange little book, that could, with its strange cast of characters that we hadn't thought about for years, and their infighting and their humor. And we're officially headed into year 2 of Hellions next month, which is a crazy thing to be saying. And I'm looking forward to seeing what plot developments we'll have in store. The reason we get together and talk about Hellions and all these other X books is why, Fariha?
X-Men is better when it's read together.
That's right, especially when you've got a cold, dead, humorless heart like mine. Sometimes you need to see these issues through the eyes of people who actually might be appreciating them a little bit more than you are. But that's true of any comic, right? Like if you're not the target audience, like I like a lot of YA comics and kids comics because I have a kid that I read comics with. And it's like, see the comics through the eyes of the person that it's meant for. So that's part of why this is fun. We don't always agree, but sometimes we get to look at them through somebody else's eyes. So you don't need the cuckoos to have psychic experiences. So that's all we have to say. We hope that you will comment because we love reading and responding to comments, like, subscribe, do all those familiar YouTube actions. And until we get to talk to you again, on behalf of Tyler, Harry, Freya, and myself, this has been This Week in X from Crushing Comics, and we hope that you are well.
Bye.